And if you're bitter, what happens is it's going to go into wrath. The definition for wrath is a hot anger. It's an outburst of wrath, an agitated condition of the feelings. And so what you've done is bitterness seems to be on the inside, and you assume, or correctly or incorrectly, what someone's done to you. It doesn't always have to be incorrectly. It's correctly. But you don't forgive, and so you let that root start. That's on the inside, and then it goes on the outside, and you have the big blow up. Well, then the next one is anger, and that's the same word that's in "Don't let the sun go down on your anger." And it is impulse, the desire to punish one who seems to have hurt you. See, and this is on the inside again. It is a more settled or abiding condition of the mind, frequently with a view to getting revenge. And then it is, in the Greek, means impulse. So in Webster's I looked up the word for impulse, and it means excitement to action arising from a state of mind or some stimulus, a sudden inclination to act without conscious thought, a motive or tendency arising from within. So Webster's and Greek agreed. So you've got bitterness on the inside, wrath on the inside, anger, wrath on the outside, anger on the inside, and then it comes to clamor, which is on the outside again, and it's an outcry, a tumult of controversy. You've had another blow-up. I thought we talked about that. But it's not settled, see, because you've never really forgiven. You see, it never goes back inside again. Then it goes to slander, which is destroying one's good name. It's a false witness. It's evil reports. It means to injure in the Greek. And then malice, the malice aforethought, is an evil habit of the mind, badness in quality and vicious in character. Webster's defines it active ill will, a desire to harm another. It's willful harm to another. So don't let this progression, see, this is a progression. Don't let this get started. Get rid of that root of bitterness immediately. And it said instead, in the next verse, be kind, tender-hearted, forgiving others, even as God in Christ has forgiven you. And forgiveness can be defined as giving up my right to hurt you because you have hurt me. See? Forgiveness is letting the other person off the hook so that you can be off the hook. Forgiveness is letting the other person off the hook and letting him be on God's hook, but you're free. See? Forgiveness is setting a prisoner free and finding out that prisoner was me. And people today are not willing to forgive because they think they can get even, but really what they're doing is turning it on themselves.
Thank you for the encouragement that you've given us as we've talked to several of you. It gives us so much energy for you to come up and say, we're just like you, or I'm like Barb, and I'm like you, or how'd you got a camera in our bedroom or our front room or something? We don't really, or did my wife talk to you? No, his wife didn't talk to me. We're just reading the Bible and passing along those things that we've experienced to you. And we do this with no obligation. We're not here to make money. We're here to share our lives with you. We're in business. God blesses us. And we appreciate the privilege of being here. We're just here because we love you. That's why we're here.
Can I tell them a little bit about how we got into this mess?
Barb, why don't you tell them a little bit how we got into this mess? How about that?
When Dick and Char were youth pastors for our kids, and really they just, I really credit them with saving Tim's life, and because they always had something for those kids to do. So get your kids into a group, and when your kids are young, invite other friends over to stay overnight so that they get to know each other when they're in grade school, and they'll keep the same friends then throughout high school, even if they don't go to the same church. So Chuck had an idea, and he said, I've been thinking. We were in Hawaii. Chuck's been in advertising. And we were given a trip to Hawaii. And we were sitting on some old white clapboard hotel, the porch and the water and the palm trees and the moon, and it was absolutely gorgeous. And we were dreaming. I was dreaming. And we were saying, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could share this type of thing with people, with our friends who couldn't afford to? And then that got Chuck thinking even more, and by the time we got home, he had gotten it into his head that we should move. Well, our kids were pretty much raised, and I knew that we would never move out of the house we were in because it was adequate, and we loved it. And yet he had an idea to move, and so for quite a while, I'd say I didn't want to talk about it, but he started talking to a real estate man, and we started going around and looking at houses, and then we did look at this house, and I only went because I thought it'd be fun to see a house like that. And yet when we walked through it, the strangest feeling that the Lord wanted us to move there. But we said we wouldn't be house poor, and so Chuck was at that time advertising for Safeway, and Sears called and said, we have heard so much about you, and the word that we hear all the time is integrity. And would you be interested in taking our account? And so, wouldn't you know, we moved into this house. And it's a huge thing, and it has 28 rooms, and it's 4 acres, and it's on Capitol Hill in Seattle, if you know where that is. And we found out that we were 2 different people in that house. And that's when I said Chuck was inviting everybody over in Seattle. And I have people come up all the time and say, oh, I was in your home, and I don't even know them, and I don't remember them being there. And Chuck was at the front door greeting and making people feel comfortable, and I was in the kitchen organizing and so on. And we had so much company that we had to buy an extra 6-foot freezer, and all I did was keep cookies in it just for spur-of-the-moment company. And anyway, this is where we found out that we were 2 different people. And this is where Chuck started telling me what he thought the Lord's will was for my life. And we really were having a bad time, really having a bad time. And our daughter Beverly was in the study program at a place called Reach Out. Now it's called Precept Ministries, so she was gone. Tim was up in Alaska working, and we were alone. And then we got an invitation to go to Pro Athletes Outreach Conference, and we call that PAO, Pro Athletes Outreach. And we thought, well, why would we go? We're just business people. But we did go with another couple. Norm Evans used to play for Miami, and he, on the expansion draft, came to Seattle. And he and his wife invited us, and now they're in charge of PAO. And anyway, during this hardest time of our life, we went. And we heard Dave Simmons, who is from down here close, and he was teaching out of Ephesians 5. And he said, men, you are to love your wives as Christ loved the church, and he gave himself up for it. And he is presenting to himself the church without spot or wrinkle. So that, men, the wife that you are presenting to yourself is the wife that you have prepared for yourself. Well, Chuck didn't have a wonderful wife at that time, and I wasn't real happy with him, and he wasn't happy with me. Well, and then we heard Larry Burkett. And he said, if you can't wait 30 days for an investment, don't do it. And if you don't agree, don't do it. And oh boy. And so then that was a problem. And then we heard Gary Smalley. And so, see, the Lord put us in a position to get the teaching that we needed, because we weren't getting it this time. I mean, who would get this type of teaching at their church? But Gary and Larry Burkett and all those guys were just starting out, and we weren't even started yet. And they helped us get on the road to obedience, and that is how we happened to start doing this. And then it was the kids asked us to teach their Bible studies, and Jim Zorn was our first quarterback, and he came over to our house to tape we had an audio studio in our home, and to tape a public service announcement on the day he had been selected to be the starting quarterback for the Seahawks. Well, he was just a baby, and 23 years old, and he was single, and we asked him out to dinner, and we hadn't had football in Seattle or knew anything about it, but we thought, good grief, these kids are just babies, and they're going to have such a responsibility. And so we felt that the Lord wanted us to be like parents to them, but we didn't do anything about it. We said, if Lord, if you want us to do it, then you'll have to work it out. And one day they ask us, and then one day the Mariners ask us, and then one day the Huskies ask us, and that's how we got into that. So, okay, so this is how we started learning, really, was from the speakers that we would hear at PAO. Then, of course, a lot of reading, and then just a lot of study in the Bible. What happens when you let a root of bitterness start in you is that you're a non-assertive person. A non-assertive person says, I have no power, I'm not worth much anyway, I don't have any rights, I have no right to speak up, and I'm not responsible, and besides, things never change when I say anything, and I'm not going to say anything because it's not going to do any good anyway. And you just keep quiet, and that's what we call stuffing. See, you don't want to be non-assertive, you want to be assertive, which means that you have equal rights with a person, that you have equal responsibility, you have equal freedom, that you two are co-heirs of the grace of God. But what happens when you're non-assertive for so long, you jump from non-assertive over into aggressive, where it's no longer, I have no power, I'm not much good, I'm not going to make any difference anyway, to you made me do this, it's your fault that I'm doing this, you are just awful, you this, you that. See, it goes from I to you. And see, aggressive is angry. It's where you keep going up in anger. And so that's what you don't want to happen. You don't want that progression to start. Then, too, just as an example, years ago, when Steinbrenner was general manager, let's see, Don Mattingly, does he still play for the Yankees?
I think so.
Anyway, this article was in our paper, and he evidently is a non-expressive. And I'm always looking for examples in the paper of the things that we teach. And he said that this was in the paper in Seattle, Yankee players get no respect around here. They give you money, that's all. Not respect. Money's not respect, he said. And then he blew up, see, and he talked in the press, and he said, I meant what I said before last night's game with Oakland. I don't regret it one bit. I don't know why I did it yesterday. It just came out, but it's been in my heart a long time. It's been building over the years. I guess I'm supposed to apologize. I had no intention of saying anything or starting anything. It was real, though, and I'm not going to back away from it. And so, see, he said all these things that he didn't plan to. And that's what will happen if you stuff and stuff. You don't plan to blow up. You don't plan to have treat anyone wrong. But you need to get rid of that root of bitterness. You know, get it out and talk it out. And then if you're going to be not be bitter, there's something that you have to realize, and that is that God rules over all. And that he has allowed for us to be in the families that we were put in. He's allowed us to be in the situations. He's allowed, you know, like King David was really, in effect, cussed out by Shimei, and his soldiers said, I'm going to get him. We're going to get him. And he said, no, God has allowed him to say that. And so that things that come into our life are allowed. And the fruit of the Spirit, meekness, says that you accept whatever comes into your life, knowing that it comes from the hand of God, even though you think it's horrible. Because God allows, he wounds and he heals, he kills and he makes alive, he creates peace and he creates calamity. He never puts us to the test for failure, he puts us to the test for approval. And are we going to go through this? Perseverance in a trial means remaining in a trial in a God-honoring way. If you can translate meekness like this, it's an equanimity of spirit that is neither elated nor cast down simply because it's not occupied with self at all. See, you want so much to do what the Lord wants you to do that you will accept what comes into your life. So you won't, if you're meek, you won't be bitter. It's God's cure for bitterness. Okay, and I did, Kay Arthur wrote this study, Lord, Heal My Hurts, and at the end of it, I wrote a contrast between bitterness and meekness. Bitterness is a focus on yourself, while meekness is a focus on God. Bitterness is a focus on my way, rather than a focus on his way. Bitterness is unrighteousness, while meekness is righteous. Bitterness is rejecting God's way. Meekness is accepting God's way. Bitterness is from the flesh, and meekness is from God. Bitterness is murmuring and complaining, while meekness is serenity. See, it's having a serenity of spirit because you know God is in control. Bitterness is disputings and defiles others. Meekness is peace. Bitterness is looking at the circumstances, and meekness is looking beyond the circumstances to the end result. What's going to happen if I go through this in a God-honoring way? Bitterness is prideful and promoting self. Meekness is humility and denying self. Bitterness is anxiety, while meekness is trust. Bitterness is anger, while meekness is delighting in the Lord. Bitterness is a deed of the flesh, while meekness is holiness. Bitterness is resentment, while meekness is acceptance of His love for us and through us, so that we can love the Lord with our whole heart and love our neighbors as ourselves. One of the athletes gave me this cartoon because she thought it just fit us so well. And this is someone who's persevering in a God-honoring, see, you can say things, but you have to say them in love. And this is a cartoon, has a whole bunch of panels, and I'll read it to you. I resent you. Well, I dislike you. You offend me. You rankle me. I detest you. I despise you. You infuriate me. You enrage me. You disgust me. You make me sick. You rile me. You make my blood boil. See, they're saying this back and forth to each other. I loathe you. I abhor you. You nauseate me. Luckily, we're committed to this relationship. So that's the way we are. Then just one more thing, huh? Okay. Body language is 55% of communication. Tone of voice is 35%. 2% is intuitive, and words are only 8% of communication. So, I wasn't picking up Chuck's body language, but I don't think he was giving me a tone of voice. I just really believed I hadn't done anything wrong. But I was just so naive. And so body language is 55%, tone of voice 35%, 2% intuitive, and 8% words. We did go through a time when I knew, I'm not so naive, and I pick it up, and Chuck takes me to the Mariner ball games, and he takes me down a certain way and lets me off, and then he goes and parks. And then I don't have to walk fast to get on with his life. I can just saunter up to the seats, and we get there about the same time. And when Chuck was letting me out, he would start up the car before I would get completely out. And I thought, good grief, I hope he finds out what's bothering him, because he's going to kill me if he doesn't. And I brought it to his attention that he was starting up the car and not letting me safely get out. And he said, well, it was car language. It wasn't body language.
We like to be practical. Here is the solution for this. If you find yourself in this situation, now some of you, I've already talked to several of you, who both of you are non-expressive. You're both of you like me, which means you probably have a lot of silence in your relationship. Neither one of you want to talk. You're both looking at it as vomiting. And it's usually, in that situation, it's usually the woman, because she's into the relationship more, who will finally say, can we talk? Fine. We'd like to ask the men, if you're in that situation, to take some leadership in that, since God holds you responsible for the mood of the home, for the management of the home, servant, we'll tell you a little bit later. But the atmosphere of the home is your responsibility, men. So if you're in this situation, I have to grit my teeth, and sometimes, because I'm subjective, I will say to Barb, I don't want to do this. Boy, that's the last thing I want to do, but I do it because I'm committed to God and to her. Am I doing something that's bothering you? So you see her eyebrow twitches. And I say, oh man, I guess I'm in trouble again here. And if I just swallow that, I'll put an eyebrow twitch from today and a tight voice from last Thursday and a quick answer from a week ago Monday, all together, and I've already told you about that, bringing it up into the present. But I must keep these short accounts where I have to say, am I doing something that's bothering you, to allow her to say, and she says this about 95% of the time, no, I've got this terrible headache. I just got off the phone with my mom. Grandkids are driving me nuts. Whatever it is, it has nothing to do with me. But if you're both like that, like I am, then the man should take the leadership, but most of the times the woman will finally get to the point of saying, can we talk? Now, if you have two people similar in this, that's a wonderful gift to a relationship. You both can go toe-to-toe, attack each other, and be friends again. And so if you have that situation, it's a lot healthier. But normally, opposites attract. I was attracted to Barb because of her gifts. She was attracted to me because of some of the things she saw in me. Here's how you solve it. I learned this first at a management seminar, and down at PAO, George and Liz Tolles talks about it too. It's called quick listening, and this is the idea. At our Thursday date, I give Barb hope. She gives me time first. We have a conflict. I know you can't talk about it right now, which is my cue to say, yeah, I really can't. How about Thursday? I give her hope. She gives me time. Okay, now Thursday, her tendency is to jump all over point one. And so, under quick listening, I can talk now until I'm done. And the first time we did this, she said, well, just keep it short. Well,
you're supposed to keep it short because we were instructed to give short sentences so that the other person could speak it back, and then you speak back exactly what they said until they know that you know what they said. But I said to him, I want him to keep it short so we could do that.
An expressive wrote those rules. Forget those rules. Don't mark this down. This is not the rule. Because of the fact that Barb thinks, because she's an expressive, then I can give a little feeling, and we just talk about that real friendly, and we'll give another little feeling, talk about that real friendly. No, wait a minute, I'm done. I'm going to lie. Because she's cutting me right off at the pockets, I'm going to say, oh, everything's fine. And she's not going to get point 2 and 3, no matter how wonderful she is. So forget those rules. The real rules, the right rules are, I can talk until I'm done. Keep it short. And I always have a note paper and a pencil here, and I said, well, take notes.
And I said, I can't remember everything you're getting wrong.
Yeah, so take notes. So she did. And people like me, like I mentioned a little bit ago, we look at the ceiling, and hard for me to get feelings and words, and I strain a little bit, and like this, and I read my list. So I could talk until I'm done, and she cannot interrupt. No body language, just kind of sit there. And then she kind of reflects that back after I'm all done now, not in the middle, but after all done. She reflects that back and says, you feel this because of this, and until I can say, yes, that's exactly how I feel in this particular situation.
Without making comments about what you said.
Then she can talk until she's done. I can't interrupt her. I cannot correct her. I can't do anything. And so she talks, and so at the end of that process, we do it out at a restaurant, so you can't yell at each other. Do it somewhere. And for the first time in my life, and this happened about 6 years ago, we had all the stuff on the table pertaining to this problem. I had all my feelings. She had all her feelings, and an amazing thing happened. And you're more intelligent than I am. I'm just dense, but I didn't see this. Is that I didn't need anger then. At the end of that process, I was one of the best debaters and communicators in the world, and I could just trade all this information back because it was on the table. And so I found out that my frustration and my anger was coming from never having finished a thought, never being able to put words to my feelings, always being cut short, always being pushed back down in my shell, and getting angry because of it. So that was such a freeing thing for us, absolutely freeing. And we recommend even good marriages have a weekly date. Now, I understand finances. Sometimes it has to be at the park instead of a restaurant. But if you do that, for me, not for Barb, but for people like me, I must have a little bit of time to get in touch with my feelings. And when you do have a conflict, you know you're never more than 7 days away from solving it. Because the only reason to have your Thursday date is not talk about work, not talk about kids. You say to each other, how am I doing in my subjectiveness this week? Have I read into something? How am I doing in my anger? Tuesday I really blew up. Would you forgive me for that? And have I attacked you lately and cut you short? And you just trade that information at this Thursday date, And that really helped us a lot. It really did. But remember, the expressive must create the crisis because we non-expressives don't have the skill to do that. Another one of the men-women differences we might talk about real quickly is the brain wiring. Dr. Dobson's talked about this, where at about the 16th week of the fetal development, a male's brain is bathed in some kind of hormone that destroys many of the fibers that go across the two hemispheres. Not all of them, but many of them, and the woman's brain never goes through that. So when we're born, we tend to be more one-dimensional as men, just by God's design. It has nothing to do with anything, God's design. So this means that when we're watching Monday Night Football, I don't know if I'm married. I don't know that I live in Seattle. I don't know that I have a puppy and a couple of grandkids, and I haven't got it. All I know is if our running back doesn't make third and long, we're in trouble. And we may lose the game. That's all I know. And pretty soon I hear this disturbance in the room, and it gets a little louder and a little louder, and pretty soon it gets loud enough for me to hear, and it's Barb, and she wants to talk to me. And I've asked her not to speak until halftime, but she brings up some little domestic thing like the furnace blew up, the dog died, some little piddly thing, and now I'm all hers. I haven't got a slice idea what our running back is doing because I'm a little more one-dimensional. I have even known some wives, I'm sure not down here, but there were some wives that just when their husband woke up to the fact he had a wife, she says, well, if you didn't hear me, forget that. And all you see is her leaving the room. And I think the principle here, ladies, is that just because your mouth is opening and closing does not mean we're hearing you.
We knew that, didn't we?
You must get our attention. You must make sure that our eyes unglaze and that we see, oh my goodness, I have a wife that I am married. Okay, good. And here's the practical deal. What Barb does in that situation is take my head in her hands, and she goes like this. Hello, Barb to Chuck. Hello, testing. Barb to Chuck. Hello. And she looks at my, okay, good. And then I say, oh, now I'm going to remember anything she tells me. Because I tell you, I don't know if there's any other wife that does this, but Barb will tell her best friend, tell her mother, she'll say to her mother, I'm going to ask Chuck to take out the garbage or something. And then she never tells it me. I mean, those words have never entered her mouth in my presence. But then I get bawled out when I don't take out the garbage.
Actually, we have talked for a good half hour on a subject and found out later we were both talking about two different things.
But that's because of the brain wiring. I'm more one-dimensional. Barb is multi-aware. We'll be at the Mariner game. We have our tickets in the wives section, which is our mission field, and Barb will take her handwork, which kind of desecrates the American game a little bit right there anyway, but takes her handwork. She knows who's angry, the 2 or 3 of the wives, who's having problems. She knows where Rick the peanut guy is, and she knows the score of the game. All I know, again, if we don't advance the runner, we are in big trouble. That's all I know. I don't know any of that. I think that estrogen tends to fog the woman's brain a little bit because something happens because we do not think on the same level. In our home, we have I have the shower in my bathroom. Barb has the tub in her bathroom, and sometimes she'll be in the shower, and one time I was shaving, and she said, "Put the hot water on." Okay, I put the hot water on. I thought maybe I was affecting her shower or something. I put the hot water on, and I went back to shaving. What she meant was under the coffee.
He didn't leave the room. He always puts the tea kettle on and then comes back upstairs, and I said, did you put the hot water on? And he went, no. And he reached down and turned it on. And I said, he didn't leave the room. What's he doing?
See, I didn't have enough information to go on, actually. I needed more of an introduction or mention coffee or something, you know. We were driving up someplace, and we were just driving along. Beautiful time together. Barb says, you'll enjoy meeting her. Who, when, where, you know. She thinks I should be right there mentally with her. She was reading the paper one morning at breakfast. She said, would you have what's-his-name fix that thing? Again, I don't have much to go on, you know. I've just, what's his name, what's the thing, and then she changes the subject. we'll be talking about last summer's vacation, and all of a sudden we're talking about next summer's vacation. She forgets to tell me that she switched. And
I
so
think you fade in between
is that
things.
what it is? But all of a sudden nothing is making sense, and I'm kind of, where in the world, like this. And then we have to back all the way back to say, oh, next summer. Okay, good. And then she has to start over again. And I think brain damage. Sometimes it causes men not to be able to find stuff in cupboards. I don't know if any of you have trouble with that. Barb sends me to the cupboard, find something, and it's not there. It is absolutely not there. And so she'll go over and she'll move something and pick it up. I didn't know I was supposed to move anything. So she'll get it and she'll huff around and why didn't I get the thing out of the cupboard? And so it's kind of World War III. But if sometimes she'll go over to the cupboard and it's not there. She moved it over somewhere else. Now it's the comedy hour. I must have moved it, And tell my goodness, So anyway, so I don't know how marriages make it rather than the other way around, really. But when you can laugh about it a little bit, sometimes that helps, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah, and we are more into the laughing stage because it didn't do any good to criticize. It doesn't do any good to criticize. And that I think I told you at the beginning that our differences were so different that we really, I do think, Chuck says he didn't, but I felt like he looked at me like the enemy. And that I was just out to get him. And I wasn't out to get him.
I think I felt that way.
I know.
See, I'm more into feelings,
That's what I
even though
thought
it
you
sounds
felt.
funny that a man would be into feelings, but we men have feelings all the time. That's why I don't want anybody to mess with them. That's why I don't look at Black Stallion or something, because I know the dog will die. In fact, on these videos things, she took me to beaches, and
we rented beaches.
Yeah, we rented beaches, and it's a horrible movie. First of all, they visit for 20 minutes, then the grandma dies. Then they visit for 20 more minutes, and the dog dies. And they visit for some more minutes, go down to the restaurant and visit, then they go out on the lawn and visit, and then they go to church and visit. And it's all it is 90 minutes of visiting, and there's not one alien in the whole thing, not one alien. So I don't like people to mess with my emotions, but I have emotions, I have feelings, and so it felt like that you, and I wouldn't have ever said you were my enemy. I've never felt that, but I felt that you were always giving me all these opinions. You were always in my face about how did I feel about something. We were always at each other's throat, and it felt like we were adversaries rather than lovers,
In this book, You Just Don't Understand, she said that men speak for to be different, where women speak for connection, intimacy, and being more the same. So that I think it's always a surprise to us when we talk to you guys as our husbands and you take the opposite stand all the time. That sometimes we would just love to have just a conversation where we just get to talk and there isn't any competition. And so, very often we came to realize that, we're just in the car. And we think, I hear Chuck's opinion on something. Oh, I think, well, that's interesting. And then I tell him what I think, and then he goes, well, it was just my opinion. Well, yeah, I know.
Well, it sounds like we're discussing it.
That's what I thought.
Like she'll say, where do you want to eat? And I'll say, I don't care where do you want to eat. I want to honor her. I want to go where she wants to eat. She says, I don't care where you want to eat. And I say, I don't care where do you want to eat. So, and she says these words, where do you want to eat? So I say, how about Mexican food? She says, bleh. No, let's go to Ivor's, fish. Now you see, that bothers me a little bit because she said, where do you want to eat? And I said, fish, and now all of a sudden, pizza or something is not the right answer. I was wrong now by saying something.
But I thought we were just discussing it still.
Yeah, but I heard you say, where do you want to eat?
But that was rhetorical.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Or sometimes, where do you want to sit? We'll go to some place where our seats aren't assigned. Where do you want to sit? I don't care. Where do you want to sit? I don't care. I don't care where we want to sit. Where do you want to sit? Sounds like she says, where do you want to sit? I say, how about here? And she says, no, let's go down front. But it's that business that you think we're still discussing it.
Yeah.
And we feel like okay, that's fine. Okay, have it your way. I mean, we're done with it because it sounds like we were wrong, their failure.
I
I'm
guess
wrong
so, because
again.
you always turn it to.
Yeah.
See, when I was,
So obviously, pizza is not the right answer. It's fish.
if I'd say, the person that is more expressive has to create a crisis. So I'd say, could we talk? And he'd say, what'd I do this time?
Well, I always
Well,
did.
that is the biggest block to
Yeah,
communication.
but wasn't I always involved usually?
Well, you were,
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought. Well,
But to say,
just telling the truth.
no, you're
you know.
supposed to say, yes, when do you want to talk?
Oh, is that rather than
Instead of putting the guilt on.
no guilt? I just knew I'd be involved, so might as well get into it. You know.
Anyway, when a husband gives his opinion, the wife considers it an opinion. When the wife gives her opinion, the husband considers it a command. Right?
That's right. Where
So
pizza is the right answer, so we need to go to pizza.
So yesterday or the night before, you were watching C-SPAN. Our luggage didn't come in, and Chuck had to wait up till 3 o'clock for it to get to the house. So he was watching C-SPAN, and you were watching them debate. And so what did you tell me the next morning?
Well, just when I run for Congress, I see these guys going back and forth on these gals, just up the mic and doing a little political thing and giving a little viewpoint, and they're back and forth. They're really wasting a lot of time, in my opinion. And so when I run for Congress, here's how we're going to do this. I'll just graciously let 2 or 3 other folks speak, but once I speak, that's the end of it. We're done, because I'm right, of course. So as I give my speech, then that'll be the end of the debate. You won't have to go back and forth
That's
anymore,
right.
because I'll just present the facts,
So
and they
I
might as well
said
do
to
it.
him, I don't know why that surprises me. That's the way you've run our marriage. And I have had this saying to him when we've been in a conflict situation. He doesn't want to talk about it after he said something. And so this is what I've said, which he has just hated. I've said, oh, when the king speaks, does nobody speak after the king? And that's exactly what you were saying. You would just let a few give their opinion, and then they couldn't talk. So that brings me to nourishing and cherishing. Ephesians 5:29 says to the man, no one ever hated his own flesh, but nourishes and cherishes it just as Christ also does the church. So, if you're a good precept student, you look up those words. And the word for nourish means to bring to full maturity. The word for cherish means to create a warm atmosphere. Okay, so it looks to me that the wife is not in charge of the atmosphere of the home at all. This is what we've been taught our whole life. The man is in charge of the atmosphere. He is to create a warm atmosphere in which his wife can be brought to full maturity. Write that down. Isn't that interesting? Because, see, we are responders. The type of love that we are told as women to love with is a phileo love. It is a friendship love. It's the type of love that is a responding love. Let me give you a definition of phileo love. It is seen in another something you especially like and enjoy. It is to like each other because of common interests and goals. It's a fondness for. It's to be attracted to someone, to make fun for and with them. To flirt with, to laugh with, flirt with if they're your husband, to laugh with, to look in their eyes and enjoy them, to admire, value, prize, and pay attention to them. And that's the kind of love that we are told in Titus. The older women are to teach the younger women to love their husbands and to love their children. And this is both for husband and children is this friendship love. Well, it occurred to me one day that not only do our husbands need us to laugh with them and have fun with them, but so do our kids. Because when you laugh and have fun with somebody, they know you like them. See? And I can remember that our son felt like he and his dad just didn't joke around as much as Bev and Dad did. And I said to Chuck, you know what I think? And he's 23 at the time. He just needs you to laugh with him. And so Chuck did, and Tim's walk even changed. It was just the most wonderful thing to see, because you cannot have fun with someone without them knowing that you like them. I asked Chuck when I was writing my book, Stand By Your Man, And I really do want to call it How on Earth Can I Stand by This Man? I just wish everybody would write the editor. But I said, what do I do for you besides the obvious that you love the most? And he said, I like it when we have fun together, when we play together. And I thought, that's exactly what Scripture says. And I asked him another time. I had to interview him to see what I was doing. They said they thought he turned out so well they wanted me to write and how I did it. And so the next thing he said is, I like it when we have an argument, when you pretend like everything's okay and we have fun again. Now you break the ice. Well, I can do that easier because of being an expressive person and because of not holding things in. So nourish and cherish then is to create an atmosphere in which your wife can be brought to full maturity. But let me tell you that when you create that atmosphere, it is so easy to reverence you. See, a wife is told to reverence her husband, to respect her husband. And this would be a controlling motive of your heart. This would be a wholesome dread of ever displeasing your husband. See, really wanting to do for them, doing the things that you know that they want, making coffee from scratch instead of instant coffee. I mean, just simply doing the things that they love, and not making them wear clothes that they don't like to wear. There was only one time that I made you wear clothes. I made him wear galoshes, moon boots.
We were going across the state to play a game with Huskies. I'm always on the sidelines, and Barb thought it'd be cold, and so she went out and got me these moon boots. They look very swishy, but I decided to wear them. Now
they're all lined and thick and
all the real men had Nikes and Adidas, and there I was with my moon boots on, and the game had started, so I couldn't go back to the. So I tried to pull my pants down a little bit to cover them, and that got drafty, so that didn't work out real good. But we did win the game because of it. I was standing there on the sidelines. Here comes the opposing running back around. He saw my moon boots, started laughing, and the secondary caught up with him and made a big loss, and we won the game because of it.
So it was okay after all.
Yeah. But she does stretch me once in a while, that's for sure.
I do. So anyway, I'll give you the definition of reverencing. And this is, as I said, a wholesome dread of ever displeasing. You see, it is the same way that Christ reverenced the Father. He said, I do only those things that are pleasing to Him. I don't do anything on my own initiative. As I hear, I do, as I see. So you see, He never usurped authority. He was given authority, it said. Father's given all authority to me. The Father and I are one. Just fits so beautifully with marriage. But He so well reverenced the Father, just like we are to reverence our husbands. For us, it means to notice Him, to regard Him, honor Him, prefer Him, defer to Him, appreciate Him, venerate and esteem Him, praise Him, prize, adore, enjoy, love, and admire Him exceedingly. Now, you guys could really love someone unconditionally who treated you like that. And see, the things that the Lord has told us to do make it so easy for the other person to love us. But a man is to nourish and cherish his wife as he does his own body. A soft contact needs the right atmosphere for it to fulfill the purpose for which it was created. Our daughter bought me soft contacts once. She wanted me to quit wearing glasses and to look beautiful, and so I was trying to wear them, and when I was changing them one day, I dropped one. Well, I thought I had dropped it, and I was sure I saw it go down the drain. And so, wouldn't you know, I got out everything to get the drain off and got a sieve, and it wasn't there. But the next day, where it was on this little stand-up mirror, old-fashioned stand-up mirror that I have on the counter, and it was just as dry as a cornflake. It was just all wrinkled up, and it couldn't be used for the purpose for which it was created. But when I put it back in the right atmosphere, in the water, then it just became usable again, and that's the way it is with a wife. Howard Hendricks tells the story of a man coming to him and telling about his awful wife. And he said to the man, was she like that when you met her? And he said, oh no, and she was wonderful, and described her. And then Howard said, you mean you've created her this way? See, because we are responders. And we will operate properly when we're in an atmosphere that we were created to be in.
This nourish and cherish is another thing that we men have to be taught. And by the way, women, hang in there a little longer, because it sounds like we're all toward you, but at the end of this thing, the men get theirs, so just hang in there. A man, because we're in charge of the atmosphere of the home, needs to create this atmosphere. I was raised on a farm, and so we had setting hens, we call them, and they would have the little chickens underneath the mother hen, and she'd just fluff up, and all the little chickens would run under. That's the picture of what a man should be to his wife. It's a comforting place. It's a safe place. It's a fun place. And so oftentimes we look at the wife and say, and put her on a performance basis and say, as long as you do these things, I'll love you. And don't say that, but in our attitude, we say that, when it should be just the other way around. We need to help her develop her gifts. If she's an artist, make sure she has brushes. If she's a teacher, make sure she has an opportunity to do that. If she's a musician, make sure she has an instrument. If she's a business-oriented woman, be creative and allowing her to, you don't allow her to do anything, but as a team, to have her go out and especially when the kids are gone, she can be president of IBM. And in fact, that's the tragedy, I think, of the women's movement, is the fact that so many little women are running around getting Porsches instead of babies, and forgetting the fact that after you have your family in a unit and the kids are starting going to high school and college, you have 30 years at least, sometimes 40 years, you're young women. And you can be president of IBM, you can get your Porsches, you can get your Mercedes, you can do anything you want. You can just go out and conquer the world. But if you trade Porsches for babies at this early age, you'll miss the absolutely intoxicating gift of grandparenting. You're too old. Look at Connie Chung. I think she's 40 now, and she's in effect saying, oh, wait a minute, I forgot to do something. I forgot to have babies. And by the time she has babies and they have babies, she's probably died. I think it's a tragedy. So we're not saying that women can't work. We're saying, God is saying, what a neat deal it is to have a family unit, and the husband then creates that atmosphere for that family unit to grow. And if the woman has a spiritual gift of teaching, I think of Kay Arthur a lot. She's a dynamic teacher. Jack is a servant. He is such a neat person to be behind. He comes behind and makes sure the books are out, makes sure the lawns are mowed. He's the president of the organization. He makes sure the administration, but she's up front. She's the one that gets all the glory, and yet Jack is as much of that ministry as she is.
So really, Jack was man enough to let Kay be everything God created her to be.
He recognized her spiritual gift. His gift was not the same, and we don't have to have the same gift in any of this. And the key to nourishing and cherishing is make our wives a 10, the most important thing in our life. You see, the biblical priorities, and I didn't understand this, I had to be taught this. The biblical priorities is that a man, first of all, has a relationship to Christ, and I know there's some non-Christians here. It's a matter of, we just love to have you here, and we just want to just say it really works, but you have to decide that. But those of you that are Christians, our first priority is Christ. Our second priority is our wife, biblically, because we're to die for her, present her to ourselves. And then third is kids and grandkids. Fourth is making a living. Fifth is ministry. And I know some pastors, Dick can mix 4 and 5 because he's making a living and also ministering full time. I see so many people put ministry up number 2. I've had pastors in my life that somebody's going to commit suicide and he'd already promised the kid to go fishing. He'll go to the church at midnight or something and minister to the person who's going to commit suicide. I think that's okay. But I think what you do is be creative. What you do is say, oh, yeah, you could commit suicide. I'm sure you could. I'll tell you what, let's have lunch Tuesday and we'll talk about it. Now, see, they can't kill themselves until Tuesday because they've got a lunch with you, and you go out and take the kid out fishing. Now I know not all of you agree with that, and I don't mean to be facetious on that. But what I mean is that if you're spending all your time at the church, you're an Awana leader, you're on the board, you do night counseling, and your wife is screaming. We did a seminar for a very large organization. I won't tell you which one. I was meeting with the head of it, happened to be a man, and we were talking about the itinerary and all that kind of thing. And I'm an old guy now, and I'm kind of into this marriage thing, and I can very naturally ask another man, how's the old marriage? And he said, oh, great. We are a team. We're just doing wonderful. It couldn't be better. Barb is having lunch with her, and she's saying, this turkey, all he does is spend time in his ministry. He never gives us the time of day. Our kids are going to hell. And she's screaming at him, and he doesn't have a clue. And that's because he's not in touch. He's creating the atmosphere for his ministry, but he's not for his family. In fact, the Bible is very clear. I think it's Timothy. It says, don't let a man even sweep out the church until his family is managed. Not perfect, not in line, but as he's created this atmosphere, as he's the servant of the family, and they're kind of clicking along, now we can make him an elder or a pastor or have him do something else. We get that backwards. And so we men have to be creative in this nourishing and cherishing, which means we make them a 10, which means they are the most valuable thing in our life, and it's a choice. We have to choose to do that. It does not come naturally, especially if we have them on a performance basis and they weigh too much, or they spend too much time on the phone, or they're too close to their mother, or whatever. We're looking at that as reasons not to give this unconditional love to them. So what we have to do is be creative in remembering birthdays. That's important to wives, and anniversaries. And I could bring little love gifts home to Barb for no reason at all. Once in a while, March 13th, might be some of your birthdays, but it doesn't mean anything nationally. And I'll stop by the supermarket and get her some decorating magazines. She loves that. I'll just take it home, put it on her desk, say I love you, and she feels loved because I remembered to do something like that. I grieve at the number of men that are so insensitive. They're forgetting, they always have to have hints. Oh, it's Christmas. Oh, yeah, Christmas. That's right. And they go out the last, Christmas Eve and get the present. That's just such an insult because we're not nourishing and we're not creating this atmosphere for the growth. We're treating and never touching her unless we want to go to bed. She feels used, and that's where we get this whole women's thing, objects and taking for granted. A man has to be taught. That means we need to let them, have those frilly towels in the bathroom. I don't know if any of your wives do that. The little guest towels that about this big, and Shar had duckies for soap. And that's really neat, but I didn't want to use them because who would mess up a ducky, So I searched around in the bathroom there, and I found some old ivory that Dick had thrown down in the corner somewhere, and so that worked out really good. And also allows them to maybe to have that fuzzy toilet seat thing that keeps banging down. If anybody had that? Because ladies, I don't think you know how awkward it is to stand there with one foot holding that up. It is just plain awkward. But if she's into that, you'll just have to stand there, just maybe get a stool or something to hold on to. But that's all involved in this nourishing and cherishing to allow you to, not me, had nothing to do with me, it has everything to say, how is my wife growing? I present her to myself. And when we see a witchy wife in a couple, we do not say, what's wrong with her? We say, what's wrong with him?